A very pleasant evening to one and all viewing this presentation. It's another edition of Rapport with the Men's Council. That's the St. Kitts National Men's Council. And we are extremely delighted to be here once again. We've been having some extremely interesting discussions, and we'll continue. And we hope that these redound to the benefit of all. Tonight, joining me is Melvin Agard. He's a member of the National Men's Council, and we want to explore tonight, as we continue with the role of men. We would like to look at how are men portrayed in our society. You know, traditionally women are seen as caregivers, nurturers, homemakers, and helpers. Men's gender roles revolve around characteristics such as dominance, assertiveness, and strength. Traditionally, men's gender roles include being a breadwinner, a leader, a protector. Those are some of the ideas that we mentioned in our last broadcast. So tonight we want to discuss a bit how the society views men, how are men portrayed, how are they represented in the society. And I would like Melvin now to open it up and share his perspective on this very interesting question. How are men portrayed in society?
Yeah, well, blessed greetings, all. Yeah, I give thanks again to be a part of the reasoning rapport with men from the Men's Council. And I give thanks to the Almighty also to give my life and all that is necessary to come and make these utterances. As they say, blessed to be blessed, and let the words be of sound and power. So the society technically, is made up of men as well. So sometimes it's then how men view themselves and, how are they playing their role, as we would have had that reasoning sometime back to talk about the role of men. And being here in an environment of the Christendom or the Christian energy, we have to take everything from the Bible if we're going to have this reasoning to a level like that. And just to break it down a little bit, there is man, there is man, and then you have male. You have women, and then you have female. According to the biology, the man's supposed to be having the X and Y chromosome, which might mean that he have some maleness and some femaleness in his makeup. He's the one that deals with the situation as to gendering a child, because the X and Y go, the egg, whichever reach the egg first. So the man is always responsible for these things, even though some women might get blamed and what's not for it. So from the very beginning of it all, the reason I'm trying to break down maleness and femaleness is because the energy of the male is what you call limitless potential energy. Limitless. And the women are who bring it into a limited space, limited being. So when you have millions of sperms running after egg, the egg, whichever one reach the egg, the woman take that one from all of them other could have been and choose one. Like Dwight was chosen, Agard was chosen, and all the other brethren and them. And even all of you who are listening, you were chosen. So it's as if to say your mother chose you. Of the millions of sperm that were available, that could have been chosen, you were chosen. So the beginning of it, where the Bible might say, in the beginning, there was the Almighty God. And when you read the book, the reference to the Almighty God is always in the mention of a male. And that is because the almighty maleness and limitless potential can only be described into that maleness, that limitless potential, into that maleness. But when you hear about the wisdom of God, then you hear about the femaleness. So even Solomon, when he speak about the wisdom of God, he says she. Because the limitless potential become limited in the sense of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, and so on. And you have that of like that's what the female portion is, to bring that into that reality.
But hey God, men are generally expected to be strong and to be aggressive, and society, has these expectations of men to be bold and all of that. Every society has gender role expectations, but they can be different from group to group.
Yeah, but you see
and they change.
The expectations are the logical reasoning for anything in the jungle. With certain animals, is the male who is the protector. The one.
But if society expects these things from men, from how then are how male characters portrayed? They see they expect certain levels of behavior, actions. Certain men supposed to portray themselves a certain way, but then do you think that the male character is being how do you see it being the male character being portrayed in
Let's dial back a little bit to Samuel, mother and father. There are some people who call the Bible sexist, but let's look at Samuel, mother and father. Elkanah and what your mother name is supposed to be a church girl.
Hannah.
All right, there it is. So the woman Hannah, she couldn't, her womb was locked up. I guess the Almighty, wait for her prayers to come to open up to bring Samuel, who was very important into the whole coming of the Messiah, for he was brought into being to anoint King David, who made the covenant, who comes straight right down to the Messiah. So it was very important for Samuel to come. But the reason I said let's go to Samuel, mother and father, because she prayed for a son. She prayed for a son, not for herself.
Mm-hmm.
She prayed for a son so that the Almighty can use him. Listen to all this. She didn't pray for a daughter. Not to say a daughter is in any way less, but she prayed for a son because at those times, the male is who took the position as priest. Right? The male took position as priest, and not just priests, they were the ones who anoint the kings. So she said she wanted a son, and lo and behold, she got the son. But did she ask the father what she should do? No. She said what she gonna do. Right? So I just said that to say that, well, people may say, they're looking for men to this and men to that and to things and so on. I guess some people expected Elkanah to decide what can happen to Samuel. But she made the decision all by herself and let him know this is what she's going to do.
So are you saying that is an exception?
It's not an exception. It's just to show that expectations need to cool out. Expectations need to cool out.
But male characters, Melvin, society tends to reward male characters for control, self-control, for perhaps control of others. Maybe
when you say control of others,
with the control, you'll be able to control your children, control your wife. I don't know.
Oh, I thought you mean like a gang sense.
But then sometimes society rewards the male character for aggression and violence.
No, but worldwide societies reward their killers.
So
people go to war to kill people, and they get medals.
Mm-hmm.
And And when you just hear me mention war, right?
Right.
The expectation, that's why I said expectation need to cool out. The expectation is that when a war break out, we don't consider the amount of men that's gonna die. Because men are the ones who normally in the front line.
Yeah.
Men are the ones who gonna, you know, bust through the door, you know, take them shots and whatever the case may be. Of course you have some female that's be around, but the predominant gender when it comes to war, men, the victims, men,
When they talk about how many lives have been lost, how many persons were killed, it's generally speaking about men.
well, remember when Blake and you had, I think, this conversation, I think he did mention that, you know, they thought they're more concentrating on women and children, but I don't mention nothing about the men. Showing you clearly that the expectation is, well, look at the men supposed to die. Again, expectation need to cool out,
Right.
you know. But while all that is so, and it may sound a little strange, really and truly, is men who created the situation in the first place.
Well, why do you say that, Melvin?
Because, back to the Bible, you probably look it up. When the reasoning came up about, he said, by one man, sin came, you know, the destruction came by one man. He didn't say by one peer. He didn't say by a man and a woman. He didn't say a woman. He said by one man. Why one man? Because the man was in charge. The man was in charge. Look at society again today. Who is in charge? The man is in charge. And while the man is in charge, is he not, in a sense, doing what he inherited and don't keep charge over what he is in charge of? Look at our society, how it's running. Look at the politics, how it is. You know, I mean, men are the predominant force in politics in the entire Caribbean, maybe in the entire world, right? So, and even when it comes to war, you know, women nowadays scrapping each other and saying, let's go to war. It's men arguing about some silliness. And then a lot of other men now got to go die for that decision. So men are creating the problems, dying in the problems, suffering and creating hardship for their family and families, right? So when I think y'all were talking about the family role or something like that,
The role of men.
role of men in the family or something like that, the role of men is really what the Bible says. Take charge and teach your youths them. Teach your wife. Love your wife like how Christ loved the church. Be willing to die for your wife. He said, teach the youths them the scriptures daily. We don't do that. We see the church them backsliding right now, where instead of teaching scriptures now. Mind you, these are the same people who say they love the Jesus Christ so much. And when the Jesus Christ went to the synagogue and there was a reading, they say he took the book and he read from as Isaiah. So it's always about the book. Everything is about the book. The commandments in the book, the prophets in the book. Everything is in the book. So they now listen to these churches. They might pick a verse sometime and then take it out of context to suit the narrative as to something else that they want to talk about. But in the general sense of it, all this too was something that the Messiah said will happen, because he talked about the scarcity of the word, meaning the scarcity of him, because he is the word.
You think society expects, we go back to this word again, expects men to be financially independent of a woman?
Well, the book says a man who don't support to use them is an infidel. Infidel. He also went on to say, he who don't work shouldn't eat. Yet we see men rising to power in these religious organizations and deciding to take on preaching and reading the Bible as their secular profession to get money, when that is not so. That's supposed to be your spiritual profession. Paul speak about his spiritual profession as to spread the word of the Most High, but he talk about his secular profession as a tent maker.
Mm.
You check?
That is so true.
But not today. Today we have guys who decide that their profession is to preach and take payment.
Yeah,
when the Messiah himself said it, freely it is given to you. So freely, you got to go give back to people.
Yep.
Freely, not at
But
cost.
you know, as society,
This is men doing this.
that is true.
All right.
But society is evolving, and men and women in leadership, Melvin Eager.
Let's go back. Let's go to
You know,
evolve. Let's go past evolve too far, because the evolution of society is based on sin. It's not based on anything else but sin. So anything evolved, like we see what going on right now. You have little children in band half naked, growing up into, like, right now is the season for that. You don't see little children up and down in band and what's not.
Yeah.
You check it out.
Yes.
And sometimes people ask you the weirdest questions. Like, for instance, as men, they might see you and ask questions like, if you check your prostate, nobody asks you if you're baptized. Nobody asks you that.
Yeah. Definitely.
Because they don't. It's obvious there's really no care about the soul of man. But there's this sinful nature that man is adapting in everything. That they ask all the other things except the right things.
Yeah, but you know, the stereotype, men are stereotyped to be aggressive, forceful, and
But it's not a stereotype, it's a reality. It's a thing that we see every day.
prone to act as a leader, that kind of thing.
Who are the perpetrators of what we call domestic violence? Who are the predominant perpetrators for domestic violence? Men.
But so looking at the society, which original question is, when we began, how are men portrayed, right? In society, how are they represented? How does society view men? And they have to talk about, these are some words that you mentioned, buzzwords, expectations of men, and
and I got a problem with expectation.
stereotyping men. Society is having these ideas, opinions, and you I rightfully agree with you that whenever you see things are evolving, things are changing, and you have to check, right? So
but you see, again, I listened this astrophysicist called Neil deGrasse Tyson speaking to this Englishman who does some shows and so on. And the question was asked about, is there a God, basically? Say, what was there before, as far as the beginning is concerned? Well, Neil deGrasse Tyson went on to say that he don't know. He's man enough to say he don't know. But he quote from a scientist in the Greece area, who said something was so profound to him that he said he feel like he's now in the presence of Zeus, meaning the Greek god, right? Now, but he made it clear that he's not convinced. This is Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's not convinced that there is a God according to how it is described to him. So, the man name is Piers Morgan. Piers went on to say, basically to say,
Piers was interviewing him.
Yeah, was saying that the areas where you don't know, that's where God is. So Neil went on to say, well, they call that the God gaps, when people can explain or find a way to figure out something, then they say it's God. Now, the reason I mentioned all of this just now, Neil deGrasse is a man, Piers Morgan is a man. They're two influential people saying some things. And the thing that Neil deGrasse is saying, which basically, in my opinion, overshadow Piers Morgan is that he don't believe there's a God. And he don't believe there's a God based on the silliest concept. Real silly concept, but sound really good. Man sound good. I could listen to man talk all day.
He's
Right.
very persuasive, you know.
But listen to silly concept. Figuring out things.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, come on. So, Jared, if you,
Things are
if you
beyond
figure
our-
out how to upholster the chair, does it take away the upholsterer who
No.
upholstered it? So if you figure out how the sunlight come down to the earth, does that take away the person who created it? So on the silliest concepts, well, these very so-called intelligent men
Mhm.
would say these things.
And
make-
they
make
ask
no sense.
questions like, who made God?
Right,
What's the cause for God? So can something happen from nothing?
right.
And you know, how
And
can,
in that question, men don't seem to want to admit that we are incapable of understanding the answers for some of these questions. Because if somebody asks you, well, who made God? And you answer, say, well, God made himself. Is there a way to prove you right or wrong?
right.
There's no way to prove you wrong. But you could at least make claims and statements to try to send off your point to prove yourself right.
Right.
Because, like, for instance, if somebody asks about, well, why believe in the Bible?
Mm.
I mean, we have the book speaking about everything basically that exists on the planet. So the Bible basically is like a blueprint.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, all the animals that the Bible speaks of, there's nothing outside of that scope on the planet has been found anyway.
Yep.
All the trees that the Bible spoke about, all the plant life, there's nothing outside of that scope. Mankind as he is, there's nothing outside that scope. And when you check like the commandments that says don't do murder, honor your mother and your father, don't be a false witness against each other. These aren't these commandments that can keep a society at peace. So the book have all sorts of things in it, whatever you like. Romance stories, scary stories, war stories, everything in there. You know? But men went ahead and they start and seek to destroy everything because
That's another discussion we could probably have down the line.
yeah, but
You
we're
know,
talking about men and what
you
is
know,
expected of them. So what is expected of men is to lead.
But how does society define a real man? What does it really
The question
mean?
is, what is a real?
What does it really mean to be a man, a real man in you know? Is it that you know, we are
Well,
real man?
I don't
A
think-
real man, real. Should a man show weakness? Yeah, should he ask for help or show vulnerability?
See how I can put this. I'm not going outside of the description in the Bible because there have been no other book that have defined us as creatures as in the image and likeness of him who created us. So to me, that's a real man. A real man is who accept and understand that he is created in the image and likeness of the Most High. In so understanding, it simply means that such a one should follow those commandments that would guide him. You know, should teach them to his youths. Live it instead of just repeating things. Live it. That's a real man. So, ain't about the expectations as you would have been saying. That's why I say expectations need to cool out. You know, look to the book. The book have everything inside of it. If you're confused, go to the book.
So if you see a woman beating up a man, and the man is crying, and you know you say, "Oh Lord, please stop it! I'm sorry," and then you're going. Would that have an impression upon you?
I see that.
Yeah.
I might never beat him too.
No, because that's why I ask you. You know, what are some
I might
uh,
have a beating
traits?
because
What are some?
why would a woman be beating a man in the first place? And
No,
I mean, mind you,
it can
granted,
happen.
I
Yeah.
have had some very aggressive aunts, and they probably would do that, you know. But you know,
Yeah.
while it happened, the frequency at which it happens is not enough to generalize it in a conversation.
Mm,
It is not frequent enough because men are generally the perpetrators when it comes to, you know,
So,
violence between
so
man
a
and man.
real man, would you say a real man doesn't show weakness or ask for help or show vulnerability?
Well, remember this so-called real man that was created in the image and likeness of the Most High have actually brought weakness into the earth, and we now call that weakness sin.
Mm,
So that sin, when multiplied, at least when it when it comes to fullness, it brings forth death. You know, so we can't get away from what sin is, not because we see religion now basically reshaping the word sin into their own image and likeness. Mind you, Father created us in image and likeness. Religion is now creating things into their own image and likeness.
mm,
Sin, according to the book, to the Bible book, people who listening late, they don't know what I mean by the book. I mean that book which we call the Bible. Sin, according to that book, define it as the transgression of the law, the
mm,
transgression of the commandments. The commandments and the laws are basically the same thing, but you could divide them into certain categories. Now, if sin is the transgression of the law, and men go ahead and start to, I'll give you an example. I'll try to reach back to that. In the Jewish culture, you have they refer to what we call the Old Testament basically as the Torah, right? But then there's this other book they call the Talmud. The Talmud is like me and you reasoning the Torah. So the Talmud cannot override the Torah. But yet, if you check the situation when Christ was around and all, when the Messiah was around, he told those Pharisees who probably was more into the concept of the Talmud than the actual Torah, that they're basically now creating their own commandment. They're making up their own laws. They're doing as they like. Those were men talking. Those were men being accused of doing these things. So which means it's been a very long time now that men have been going down the road of this sinful nature, and basically, sin started to evolve to a point where it reached to the prophets. See, we think it's Isaiah said that the time will come when they shall call right wrong and wrong right. We see our politicians them right now. What is expected of them? So let me lean that into that now, because since it's predominantly men basically running this thing, what is expected of them? Isn't it expected of them to lead the country into peace and prosperity? Do we have peace and prosperity?
Well, do we? Do we?
Absolutely not. So if we
I
don't,
was going to ask you about the gender roles. What are male gender roles?
no, but
Because
we're talking about expectation
yeah,
of men,
that will lead into that as
right?
well. Because
Men
mm,
are leading. The prime minister is a man. And the
yes,
prime minister just so happen to be also
the-
the man in charge of our national security,
right.
also in charge of our monies, also in
Mm-hmm.
charge of our health.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me which one of those that we're doing well in.
Are you asking me to?
Yeah, from your observation, are we doing well when it comes to health? Are we doing well when it comes to the
I would
economy?
really, I would
Are we doing well when it
prefer
comes to
not to.
not to engage?
Yeah, in
Well, yeah,
that.
you're getting paid from them.
No. I'm not saying that. No. But
No, but you
what
work for
I'm saying,
government, so maybe I should answer my own question.
right. So, but the thing is, I know politics is a hot topic, and whenever people discuss these issues, sometimes they get emotional, and I don't want us to You know.
No, but yeah, well, let people get emotional because it will be a very emotional day when Christ said, "Depart from me, you work of iniquity." It will be a very emotional day. So if you're gonna get emotional now, get it over with, and let's go down to reality. Because the point here is that men are not leading the way they should.
No.
Men are not leading the way they should, and women are not really being the helpmate that they should be either.
That is
Because women are encouraging and rewarding men with words and maybe other things to be as they are.
Yep.
To be non-leaders but yet in leadership position.
I want to read something here for you, Melvin. It says gender roles can be conceptualized as behavioral expectations based on biological sex. Traditionally, for men to be masculine, they are expected to display attributes such as strength, power, and competitiveness, and less openly display emotion and affection, displaying these especially toward other men. Do you think, Melvin, that men who are to display emotion and affection toward other,
Well,
in terms of,
I gotta tell you what I think about what you read. I think that is kind of like nonsensical in a way.
Mhm.
Because men actually show more emotions than women.
Mhm.
Women do the science, do the research.
They say they less openly display emotion and affection.
That is not true. That is
No.
not true. Let's deal with St. Kitts. With the murder rate as it was for the past couple of years, who were doing the killing and who were being killed? Men, right? Young men. So if young men were doing the killing, and is other young men being killed, what did you think happened? Why it happened? Wasn't it anger, frustration, confidence? All of these are emotions.
I want to think that this kind of emotion here.
Right.
you're
So,
talking about.
right.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
so
yeah. Right,
don't sugarcoat
in
or
one
mix up the
aspect,
concept of emotion. If you put a list of emotion, I'm sure
Mm.
you'll get maybe close to 100 or more than 100
Yes.
different emotions that
I
men
mean,
display
being
every day.
affectionate towards, you know.
No. The thing is, somehow apparently the enemy of us want us to turn men into women.
Right.
You know, and it kind of happening. So don't tell me I should behave like a woman, and don't tell me I should expect my woman to behave like a man. Because at the end of it all, you know, every man for himself at the end of it all. But the thing is that this conversation here, where you just brought, based on what you just read,
Gender roles, yeah.
right? It's like I say, it's nonsense because you're telling me that because a woman might cry quicker than a man, it means that the man is not displaying emotion? That is not. So you're picking at an emotion, you're picking at a specific emotion and say, well, men are not displaying that, so they're not showing that they have a little emotion in them. Yeah, but confidence is an emotion. To be confident is an emotion.
Let's see, I got you.
To be jealous is an emotion. And there's a whole long list of emotions. So why is it that somehow people bringing up these kind of strange talk and say, well, you know, well, women just show emotion. Well, let's go to the science of it too, because I've mentioned this before, maybe even right here, that according to the research, men, the brain of men have a larger area in there that deals with emotion than women. So it's like the space that men have within the brain, which might translate also within the psyche and so on, is a much larger area to deal with emotion than women. Maybe that's why women cry so easily. And maybe that's why they show certain emotion quickly. While men, while there are some other emotions that they show quickly, those other emotions may be emotion that might be results of aggressiveness, anger, jealousy. You check it out, because jealousy then tap into anger. and then vex. I don't know if you could put vex myself. So the emotion the emotion that men normally display often have a little connection with aggressiveness,
Right.
right? And because men have more muscle mass, that's why, to bring in a little health talk in there, men are said, well, it is recommended that men drink 80 ounces of water per day and women drink 60 ounces of water per day, based on the
Right.
fact that men have more muscle mass than a woman. So we are different.
So you would like to see the men display more emotion on this side of um,
No, I'm not.
caring
No,
and
no,
love.
I would say no to that. What I would like men to do is accept that they are creatures who are created in the image and likeness of Him that creates, and look for the areas where He put the guidelines, meaning His commandments. What did He say to men? What did He say to man?
But how do you get men to appreciate and embrace the teachings of the Bible and
Oh, that's a kind of difficult one, because what happened is that we know, because we've been to a lot of these churches, we know that men generally don't go to church in a general sense. I mean, men, those who are there are the ones who are instrumental into doing this stuff around the church, open the window, play the piano, in the band, picking up this, preaching, So the men have to be involved in something that, that brings them there. The women, on the other hand, just there. Women and children, just there. Drive around the island on Sunday. The men by the rum shop, the women and children in church. Now, the one of the reasons that this might be so, just coming off of slavery and what's not, the enemy deciding and leave us alone. So missionaries came. While we were more moral conscious in how we live without all these churches that we have now, we were more moral conscious. We behave better. One person died 50 years ago was a big deal. Now if 30 people don't dead, it's like things look kind of slow.
Yeah,
So it was a big deal when one person lost their life to any sort of violence back then. People were more conscious. You go in a church back then. The women
So you
over
said
the
the
drinks.
introduction of the churches and so on,
No, but let me finish.
it has a negative impact.
Very negative. The whole concept of you hear about the term breakaway, right? That was something, I don't know if it's a Sankis thing, but there's breakaway. Like when a church move from the next church, like if you decide to branch out, you are breakaway from wherever you were. You heard the term, right? Yes. I just wonder if it's an old road thing, if it's a Sankis thing, or if it's just a thing in general. Right? So the breakaway concept before the breakaway concept, the missionaries came. So when you just had a few churches, mind you, a few churches, the people would go and what's not. And then that wasn't sufficient, so the missionaries came. Who are these missionaries? These missionaries are people who done break away from the church that Jesus Christ Himself and His apostles would have endorsed, ordained, started, and what's not. So these now, because if you look at, let me look at the history of the church, so to speak. The church that Paul, the apostles, and them would have set up, right? Those churches in the earlier time were called the Catholic churches. Don't get it mixed up with Roman Catholic. You have the Catholic Church, which means the Universal Church. So they were called the Catholic Church. In 1049 AD, the Roman Catholic now break away. The Roman Catholic break away because she decide she's supposed to be the boss. And that their own history with it. From that day till now, the breakaway is still happening. So let's go to what Paul said in Thessalonians. First must come the falling away. So that falling away will not stop until the Messiah returns. And as we speak now, maybe somebody who listening planning to go start their own church.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's something you know.
Well, it happens, you know. The last time I was speaking to somebody about this, the person said, well, you got, it's funny you say it, you know, because I actually going to start up something.
Mm.
So the history of the church, and when the breaking away started in 1049 AD, it come all the way down. So those missionaries now who broke away, because from the Roman Catholic you had the Anglican, you had the Moravian, you had all these come down,
Right.
you had the Methodists, you had the Seventh-day Adventists, the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witness. All of these broke away, come down. These people came to our shores. They ain't got a skin color like us, but these people come to our shores and come whisper in our ears.
Wow.
And those who like the whispering follow. Remember the book said, when the shepherd sound the voice, the sheep don't follow him. So the missionary came, they whisper in the ears, they make the voice, and our people divided themselves accordingly. So today now, look around the Caribbean. We have churches upon churches upon churches upon churches upon churches. And in my view, they're not churches. Because in my view, the church is the body of Christ. Meaning, if you believe and accept and live the life to emulate that lifestyle of Christ and his apostles, that is what church is. It's not Berridge Church or Agar Church. It's about the body of Christ.
Right, well, we know that the assembly or what people refer to as church is most cases they're referring to a building.
Exactly. That's why I just said it wouldn't be no Berridge Church right up there on the wall or Agar Church right up there on the wall.
You know?
It's supposed to be those who believe in the Messiah
church is
and
the
emulate
body of Christ,
his
the
ways.
called out ones, you know.
Body of Christ.
Yeah.
So who leading them though? Because almost all of those, except for Ellen White, who joined up with a man, I forget his name, who had the Seventh-day Baptist, hence the Seventh-day Adventist. Most of these other churches were started by men. So men, look, men is like a disease on the planet.
But let's get back to you spoke about the breakaway and the falling up, you know,
The falling
away and all of that. You know, as the world turns, Melvin Agard, you're going to find that people are men and women. As humans, we're going to have, you don't like that term human. We have discrepancies, differences of opinion, and people are not going to see eye to eye. So you must expect, there's that word again, expectation of, you call sideway, breakaway, you know, people, because they do not agree or they do not see eye to eye, I am going to
They're
go
going to start up their own thing.
Yeah, it happens in business.
So what is the root of that? What is the foundation of that? Isn't it sin?
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
But while it is sin, there is also righteousness. Because righteousness divide and sin divide. Let me explain. Christ said he didn't come to bring peace. He come bring a sword. He bring division between the mother and the daughter. He bring division between the father and the son. So he's speaking about the righteousness he bring will cause division based on what you just said. There will be some people disagreeing with each other, you know, how they see things. But he still went on and said in the next area that he did bring peace. But the peace he bring is not like the peace, you know.
No.
He bring a higher level of peace. Right? So he did bring peace. But when he spoke about the divisions, he's showing you that righteousness divide and sin also divide. Because just saying it so is like if I say sometimes I go jogging. It simply means sometimes I don't.
Right.
So righteousness, once you say righteousness divide people, it means that sin is the next part of it. You check? Because
you have to
that's that, right. But let's look at the book. Let's look at the book.
But before we look at the book, I would just like to remind you that you are viewing and listening to Rapport with the Men's Council, the St. Kitts National Men's Council. We are here at Central Praise, and we are here every other Monday night with this presentation. And we are discussing the role of men, looking at how are men portrayed in society. And Melvin, take it from me.
In the book, Barnabas and Paul were on the same mission. They love the Messiah. They're dealing with that, you know. But yet they had a disagreement. They had a strong disagreement where, according to the reading, it might have been a push off. You know, they might have had a little chuck off. And they still came back together because really and truly it was about the bigger picture and not about them. You see, while we may have disagreements, once the goal is the same, we're supposed to stand apart and continue. But when I can decide, well, because men like what you say, men like what you do, I can jump off the path.
In our hearts, we are undivided. We may have differences of opinion.
Now it should be so.
It should be. That's what it should be. We should have one goal in mind.
Should is a very strong word there, but it's just saying so.
But the reality is, it's often not like that, right?
But why? Why is it not like that?
Because of sin.
Because of sin. I just wanted to know if we're on the same page.
Right? But sadly, I'm telling you, Melvin, a lot of people do not believe in the concept of sin, or that if you mentioned as we get, I'm telling you, as we get more knowledgeable about certain things in life, certain biblical concepts and so on are being thrown out of the window.
Such as, give me an example.
Righteousness, sin, holy living, and
righteousness is broad, and sin is very broad in a sense.
Yeah,
because
but I'm saying some people do not even believe in this thing. What is sin? Just let me live my life the way I please.
Of course.
Who's to tell me I'm wrong or you're right or I'm wrong? Who makes you a judge? Who's to say this is proper, this is improper, this is moral, this is immoral?
Right.
Some people have no standards,
Right. Well, actually, they probably have standards, but they might be a little different to yours.
Okay.
So the thing is, like, a lot of times people say things like what you just mentioned for reason as they were never taught. Reason also, some people are, I would want to put it out and say, some people are genetically predisposed to behave a certain way. Some people just argumentative and combative in everything. So it's like, if they don't, so such people, even if they follow in the book,
you try to reason,
they still would find ways to be combative, reasoning the book.
Yeah.
So some people are genetically predisposed to that. And they should fight that though, because you should find peace in yourself when it comes to dealing with the book and dealing with one another. Say, love your neighbor as yourself. That ought to be one of the scripts that give us that vibe. He said right next to that is love the Almighty with all of your substance. So if you have these two commandments that cover all the other commandments then, and remember what people are going to mix up with is that these two didn't come out of the 10, but yet they cover the 10.
Could you repeat them?
Love your neighbor as yourself.
And
the Messiah took that out of either Leviticus or Deuteronomy. He said, love the Almighty with all of your heart, your strength. That also came out of one of these other books, and it is not of the 10, but it covers the 10.
Right. Because if you love the Almighty,
you don't follow His commandments.
Right. And you won't want to steal, to kill.
Right, because you remember the commandments most of the commandments are the commandments, you could look at them as divided in two. Part is how we deal with each other, and the other part is how we deal with Father. So the love your neighbor as yourself is how we deal with each other. And to love Father with all your substance is how you deal with Father, and making sure this one is good and all the others that He said as best as you can.
The laws and so on of the country, are they built on,
some seemingly so,
commandments and
some seemingly so. I don't think the country issue is even so much about the laws. It's just about the people who lead.
will lead.
Yeah, the
So-
people who lead.
So you have a problem with the leadership.
I don't have a problem with the leadership.
And-
My problem is me personally thinking that if men truly, I mentioned it and I'll say it again, if men accept that they are created in the image and likeness of Father
Mhm.
and behave so, yeah, I think we will have a better thing going on.
How do you view women in leadership role in politics and so on?
No, when you see women, it's a couple of things. When you see women leading,
Mhm.
somewhere in Isaiah he talk about punishment to his people. His people. So I'm not even so much speaking about now, because we really don't know what's going on with us these days. Like he said, he shall let children oppress his people and women rule over them. That's like a punishment from the Almighty. Let children oppress them and let women rule over them. But the other part is, when men don't stand up, the woman wasn't created to just roll over and die. She was created to be a helpmate for the man. So if the man is not standing up in his position, she gonna stand up for him. So while Paul may have mentioned some things about women should not like exercise authority over men into the system of church, yes, it shouldn't be so. But the thing is, when
So you're okay with that? Women
well, I have to be okay with it because it's a reality. When I say reality, let me not say it like that because it's a reality. A lot of strange things happening, and I don't agree with them. So, yeah, I agree with it because the church must go on. You know.
and you grew up with women being active in the political arena, being
Again, to me, the same thing stand. When the men don't stand up, and then the men are decreasing now because some men are playing around with the idea that there should be a woman. And then, you know, the system design in a way now that we lock away our men in prison. And then we have a lot of women just, you know, they want things to do. Some women just probably lonely. Looking for a man.
well,
Looking for a man, not some guy who ain't sure what he is.
we heard one prominent leader say that women are finding it very difficult nowadays to get a man who to marry who is on the same educational level, same standard with high morals and all of that. Somebody support, yeah. So do you is there a shortage in men or is it that
No, I think the leader should not have ever said that because what the leader probably didn't take into consideration that the issue, the situation is like this because of people like him. People who came before him created this situation. And if he don't take a stand and dismantle it, then it means the situation will just continue to go on like that. Because it's the leadership of the country that push men down to the bottom while men are at the top leading, but yet men down to the bottom living. So not to say anybody should be at the bottom as such, but what I'm saying is that if you know that the society is looking for this in the men, then make the provisions necessary so that men could be as they can be. The education system have been failing men for quite some time.
But don't you agree? Not is something wrong with a woman wanting to aspire, wanting to have someone at her side who is of a certain educational, who has risen on the upper echelon of the educational ladder.
I like how you put in that. It's there's nothing I can't put nothing to that because for me the book is the final, the Almighty is the final judge, the book is the Constitution, and this is where we're supposed to be reasoning things as to how we got them. Now when you go outside of that school,
Right.
it's all kind of thoughts, all kind of things.
Definitely.
You know? But I think that our first Constitution, if if dividing the word of Father and dividing it truthfully amongst one and one, if seeking the kingdom of Father is the false thing that we should do, and all his righteousness, then you must have a guidance, a guidebook. You must have a constitution. So it's like people saying, yeah, people say some strange things. Oh, do I get saved? I mean, who say these things? I mean, I don't hear it, and I don't wonder, like, are people thinking about what they're saying? Nobody knows who saved but the Almighty. No, not one man on earth know who saved but the Almighty.
So you don't believe in the concept of, you don't believe in salvation?
I believe in salvation, but only the Almighty knows.
Who is saved?
Only the Almighty knows who will go make it or who will not make it.
You don't know if you are saved?
No, each individual should at least have an idea about himself. But I'm saying, other people coming around and saying that this person saved.
The songwriter says saved by his grace, his power divine, saved.
No, you have that
life
option.
supplied.
You have the option.
Life now is sweet and my joy is complete, for I'm saved.
Right.
Saved,
So the songwriter is saying about himself. I'm talking about when people say it about other
saved.
people. I'm saying only the Almighty knows. You know, so
Mm.
but we get comfortable saying a lot of strange things, and we don't care whether or not if it's in the Bible view. You know, right now we have a silly season coming around, which we call Christmas. Nothing wrong in the concept. Let me not say it like how people have said about nothing wrong. The idea of celebrating the birth of the Messiah is a very good idea. But there's a but. But if you're not keeping the things of the Messiah, why celebrate his birthday? That's quite contradicting. The Messiah gave you clear guidance, clear guidelines, how you should live, in the sense that when that bell ring or when the trumpet blow, that you're gonna be there. He give guidelines for that, and you don't do it. But yet you're saying you're celebrating his birthday. To me, all this is like coals heaping up on them wicked head there, because imagine you're not doing the things that he said. You're not doing them, because what he said in Revelation, behold, I come quickly to give every man according to his work. What work? That work of righteousness, which he made clear, not just what he said, but was written also into the Moses time, to say, follow these commandments. Those that he nailed to the cross, which were those of disciplinary measures and the priestly orders and what's not. And even today, well, the preachers, them robbing the people, them through tithes and all these kind of things there. You know, all these things. Look, I'm telling you, that day when he said, the day shall come, many shall come and say, Master, we have worked miracles in your name. We have cast out demons in your name. And he shall say, realize we have not departed the topic, eh? Everything is still he. He shall say, depart from me, you workers of iniquity. So the Son of the Most High came, as we discussing it, as a man, as a son, as a male, as a leader, as an inspiration, as a guide to follow. And instead, we seem to want to transform this into something weird, you know.
Well, I think that we have had a wonderful discussion. We've been looking at how men are being portrayed in our society, today. How, you know, there are certain stereotypes people have of men, and I don't know, are things changing for the better? You know, many things are happening. We are living in an ever-changing world, and we just of the emphasis I would like to, as Melvin, you would say that the Bible or the book you mentioned, that is our guide, the Constitution.
So, the Constitution of the righteous.
So as we wrap up, I'd just like to give you the opportunity to share your parting words, as sentiments in relation to this, and we will bring this discussion to a close.
My parting words will be, as I've been saying, men, just understand that we are created in the image and likeness of the Most High, and that maleness, which is limitless potential, means that yes, we start a lot of stuff and don't finish them, but understand the nature of it, that some of the stuff that we start, the female counterpart, the helpmates, normally steps in and make sure that what was started get finished, and so on and so on. Men, the expectation about men, from my view, is to uphold what was given to Moses, what the Messiah came and demonstrated, and what he gave to his apostles to go and teach. I think that if men be guided by these words and these examples and live such, I think our society, now this is me saying I think our society would be a better place. But knowing that man basically is there with what he called free will, and sin is around him, you know, sometimes it's just easier for you to choose the sin than to choose the righteousness, which comes with much tribulation and suffering. So,
Well
I
said.
just give thanks for all of that. I give thanks also for the ears that listen. I give thanks for the hearts that receive. And I also give thanks to the Almighty to allow this reasoning to go forward. And we hope that it do go forward indeed. So once again, I give thanks.
That being said, brings us to the end of another presentation of Rapport with the Men's Council, the St. Kitts National Men's Council, and we are very happy to bring to you these discussions, and we hope that you have the discussion tonight has made a positive impact on your life. We look forward to coming your way again with another edition. Until then, give thanks.
Amen. Bless.